I'm Kevin Gale, voice of the Crusaders, and this is Sader Stories, the official podcast of Holy Cross Athletics, presented by UMass Memorial Health. On this very special episode, we celebrate the newest Holy Cross hockey legend to have his jersey retired inside the Hart Center, Tyler McGregor. Tyler's number 20 jersey will be retired during an on-ice ceremony at the Hart Center Sunday, October 20th, prior to the Holy Cross men's hockey game with Army at 4:45 p.m. From 2002 through 2006, Tyler led the Crusaders to 2 Atlantic Hockey Championships and the first 2 NCAA tournament appearances in school history. He scored one of the great goals in college hockey history to upset mighty Minnesota in overtime during the 2006 NCAA hockey tournament. After graduating from Holy Cross, Tyler played professionally in the AHL and works today as an orthopedic surgeon. We're thrilled to have him here. Tyler, thanks so much for joining us on Sader Stories, and congratulations on your jersey retirement.
Thank you very much for having me. It is a cool thing. Just giving me a lot of opportunity to reflect with teammates and classmates, and it'll hopefully be able to see a lot of guys there when we come back to campus for the ceremony.
Hard to believe it's already been 18 years since the last time you guys played together. How did you first find out your number 20 jersey would be honored inside the Hart Center?
Kit called. This was over a year ago, probably, when he called. I had to delay it thanks to my kids' sports schedules. But he called me when I was just driving home from work. Completely caught me off guard. And when you get news like that, it brings back a lot of emotion, right? So I found myself, shedding a tear and choking up as I was pulling into my driveway. But it was obviously a very neat phone call to get, and just a ton of great memories just come rushing back anytime you get reminded of my time there.
Obviously, the emotions are a lot to hear something like that. And you had a wonderful career: Crusader of the Year, Atlantic Hockey Player of the Year, All-American. But what did those tears really stem from? What was the emotion that tied back to your time as a Crusader?
Man, it's so hard to put into words. Like, I was working on my speech yesterday, and I don't want to spill too much of it. This might be released after I actually give my speech, but it's everything, right? You can't even summarize the guys on your team who become your brothers the second you become on campus. I know it's cliche to say stuff like that, but our team had a lot of circumstances which brought us unbelievably close together. And then the highs and the lows of your athletic career, your academic career, and it goes all the way back to just the nothing, right? The small little memories of sitting at Kimball and just messing around on a Sunday morning, just rehashing stories of the game the night before or the party the night before or whatever trouble someone managed to get into. It's so many of those memories are just so unbelievably vivid still in my mind. And they all come cropping up when you get something that just makes you think about it front and center.
It's clear you had an incredible bond with those teammates. And in our previous episode, we had a great conversation with your former head coach, Paul Pearl, who will be joining you in the Holy Cross Athletic Hall of Fame later this year. How did Coach Pearl specifically best impact your career as a student athlete looking back?
It was a pretty easy transition for me and for my relationship with him as a coach, because he echoed a ton of the sentiments that other mentors and other coaches in my life had already tried to instill along the way. So him as a coach had the same demands on me that my grandfather had of me when I was playing, youth sports and trying to mold me as a person. So there were just very tight parallels between how he ran the ship as a coach, and how I'd been raised. So it was very his ways of coaching, and some crazy, some more some more mainstream. But I just felt very comfortable with Coach Pearl from the second I met him. Tremendously genuine guy, tremendously passionate guy. And I think that was what allowed him to get the best out of his players throughout his time there. I'm
You went through.
unbelievably happy for him. Couldn't happen
Yeah,
to a better guy.
absolutely. And he was thrilled for you as well. Such a big personality, such pride, just like you have for that era where you went through such highs and lows, trials and tribulations, battled together. And I think sometimes that '06 NCAA tournament victory becomes even bigger in everybody else's mind because they don't realize all the steps that it took to get there. How did you see that opportunity, that win, not just for you, but your teammates, kind of change your lives as hockey players and Crusaders, or did it really change anything?
I think it did, and I think it changed. It's funny because it changed stuff for people who weren't even there necessarily anymore, right? Like, I know a lot of the guys who stuck around the Boston, New York area were still super close with those guys that graduated, um, '05, '04, and beyond. And that to see where the program came from, right? I know during Coach Pearl's podcast, you spoke with him about coaching 2 varsity sports and still
Incredible.
having to do all these other things. And to watch where, obviously, under his guidance and with the players who came before us, we're able to bring that program up, through the MAC and have success in the MAC, and then have sustained, right, every year success in Atlantic hockey while we were there. I think it just really gave everybody just that added, you know, verification that they were doing things the right way, right? Because that wasn't just like one weird year, right? That the guys who set that in motion, like I said, they might have graduated a few years before, but it was the complete mentality of the program of just growing, one rung up the ladder every year and culminating in '06. And I think myself and my classmates were just the beneficiaries of being in the right place at the right time and buying into a system that was just really finding itself.
And you took the opportunity and ran with it, because I think you have to go deeper when you look at that Minnesota Holy Cross game and think about it like this. Minnesota is ranked number 2 in the country at that point in '06. They had 11 NHL draft picks. Your Holy Cross roster had 7 pre-med student athletes, and that includes you. So how
Yeah.
did that difference in recruiting shape your identity as a team and maybe even as a giant killer in that tournament?
I think we were a mature team. We had 2 classes that had experience the year before, but I think what really helped us in our maturity and just is that we were all really well-rounded kids, right? Like hockey was never, it was something that we all absolutely loved. It was our passion, but we knew that it probably wasn't going to be how we put food on the table at the end of the day, right? We all knew that we had another plan. And I think that brought us closer together, right? We were all 4-year guys. No one's leaving because they're signing an NHL contract or mad because they need to go to a bigger program to get more ice time. We were there for the haul, right? And that's what helped everybody just buy in and be a team, right? And in that instance, sure, we play them 10 more times, maybe we don't win again, but it allowed us to soak in the moment without getting distracted by other stuff surrounding the game or the tournament. And what happened happened, and I think it was kind of a perfect storm for everything that led up to it.
Let's take a short break. Up next, we'll take a closer look at Tyler's Holy Cross career, balancing pre-med with championship hockey, right here on Sader Stories.
We are UMass Memorial Health, and innovation is something that defines us, that drives us to discover new ways to provide answers and hope, to provide opportunity and access and equity for everyone, to redefine what medicine can do and how it can heal relentlessly.
Bacon. Good morning, everybody. Nothing like the Jersey Mike's morning prep. The sizzling bacon, the slicing of the tomatoes, the bopping of the fresh lettuce.
Danny, what are you doing up there?
I've been living up here for months.
Got a package from Mr. DeVito?
Oh, my bacon sniffing horn. Oh, smell that bacon. Oh, wait a minute. Oh, now we're talking. Freshly prepped every morning. It's a Jersey Mike's thing, a sub above.
Leadership and excellence in competition, in the classroom, in the community.
For decades, Crusader Athletics has focused on our topmost commitment, elevating every student athlete to reach for more, to grow more, to achieve more. Help us to continue to strengthen minds, build character, and celebrate together as one Crusader Nation. Because when we commit together, we win together. Join us, Crusaders together.
For just the 7th time in program history, Holy Cross men's hockey will take the ice at the DCU Center in downtown Worcester. Join us Saturday, November 2nd at 7 p.m. as the Crusaders host the 2023 national champs from Quinnipiac. Tell your family, tell your friends. They won't want to miss this top-notch matchup in downtown Worcester, Saturday, November 2nd at 7 p.m. Holy Cross and Quinnipiac. Get your tickets now at Ticketmaster.com. I'm Kevin Gale, voice of the Crusaders, and this is Sader Stories, presented by UMass Memorial Health. I'm thrilled to be joined by Tyler McGregor, whose Holy Cross hockey jersey will be retired at the Hart Center Sunday, October 20th. Tyler, let's go all the way back to your path to Holy Cross. You grew up in hockey-crazed Toronto. How did Holy Cross first land on your radar?
This was probably it would have been my grade 12 year. So back then, Ontario had 5 years of high school. So I had the option to go in 1 year extra. That's normal now with kids playing in the USHL and top tier juniors before they go off. But I was in my second year of junior hockey when Coach Butt actually pulled me aside after one of my games. And he was a guy who, and to be quite honest, I'd heard very little about Holy Cross as a program. I knew they were D1. I hadn't done as much research on them academically because I still had no idea if I would end up anywhere. I wasn't walking in thinking I was getting recruited by all these massive schools. So I was all ears to anyone who wanted to have a conversation. Coach Butt was the first one that I'd really have face-to-face contact with. And if you ever had the chance to talk to him, he's the nicest, easiest guy to have a conversation with. And he was still, when we were there, still very much a kid at heart, like messing around with us, playing around after practice and stuff like that. So he was my first point of contact, was super impressed with him. And then was able to make a visit down to campus, and Coach Pearl actually came to my house during one of his other recruiting visits. And like I kind of mentioned in the first segment there, like it's the stuff that he says just parallels so well with my life and how I was raised. It felt just very, very comfortable all along. So that the home visit was great. My interaction with Coach Butt was great. And then my father and I drove down for our visit on campus. And it was one of those like atypically warm days, I think like early winter. And the campus speaks for itself, right? It was beautiful. Trees and plants everywhere. It's just an unbelievably nice place to walk around. And my dad's asking questions with the guy giving us a tour, and coaches were there. And I was just kind of sitting back thinking, is this a place I want to be for 4 years? And I'm looking at O'Kane and Fenwick and all these beautiful architecture buildings, and I'm walking around. I'm like, it's just a really nice place. And the more I learned over the next year, ended up talking to a few other schools and entertaining stuff. I just couldn't shake that initial feeling that I got from Coach Pearl, Coach Butt, and then the campus itself. Just seemed like a great place to balance what I wanted out of athletics and what I wanted out of academics to further my career there. Made the decision a little later probably than Coach Pearl wanted me to in my true senior year right before I committed, but never had a regret from that moment on. And I think it's worked out pretty well.
You knew you were home at Holy Cross, but you said you weren't taking anything for granted in terms of opportunities to play. And it's interesting because Coach Pearl said you seemed like a natural. You could play either wing. You had a knack for scoring big goals in big moments. What do you think made you stand out most as a forward early in your career?
Yeah, that's tough. Really early on, it helped. I was way bigger than all the other kids. I was this size when I was 13. I wish I kept growing, but I never was. So a lot of kids kind of bounced off me, and even if I didn't have the speed or the hands, I was just able to bowl through people. I never played with that mean of an edge, but when you're younger and kids are just falling off of you, that helps. Um, and then later on, I found myself with really good coaching all through my minor career, where I found myself with coaches that were putting me in opportunities for leadership, and I think that put me very comfortable. I was never the locker room guy, like, rah rah, anything like that, but I found myself being in those very fortunate situations where I had the opportunity to succeed on great minor hockey teams with really good coaches. I was lucky to be born in the city of Toronto, where hockey was a huge thing back then and still is pretty big, but um, just right place at the right time for so many of those things. And if you follow my path all along the way, my minor hockey program was good. My junior hockey program wasn't that good, but I was able to stand out enough to get the attention of Coach Butt, and just making the most of your opportunities and being prepared by going about things the right way.
And the timing of you and your recruiting class being part of a program on the rise. You think about Holy Cross wrapping up in the Metro Atlantic era and then getting set to launch Atlantic Hockey in '03. How did you see the program at large grow most from the time you arrived up to that first Atlantic Hockey title in 2004, which must have meant so much at the D1 level?
It if you Yeah, you got to dig up the video clip of how excited Coach Pearl was after that win. That sums up a lot for us, but like class had only been there for 2 years at that point.
Mhm.
We'd gone through a lot of rough stuff though, right? Like we had a lot of loss. A couple of our teammates had passed from cancer with Bomber and Spike and JJ the year before. Like if you watch that video clip of what that meant for Coach Pearl and what it meant for the upperclassmen, you know exactly where that program came through and what it went through. Um, so in terms of sheer growth, yeah, there was incremental growth every year. But in terms of emotion invested into the program, that really did start right around the year or two before I got there. And with the help of the upperclassmen who we had, that 03, 04 class, um, just unbelievably strong leaders. I got an email from Greg Keeley today, who's probably the best captain I've ever had the opportunity to play for. Um, just a guy who knows how to rally guys, right? Unbelievable locker room dude. And with him and his classmates too, right? Walker, Irving, Damsey, all those guys, um, it would have been hard for us not to succeed. Because even if we weren't that good, those guys are going to drag us to the top of our game.
Wow.
So that year to me was, I mentioned we go up the rung every year.
Mhm.
That was more than one rung that year. That really set the bar for what we can do when you play as a team. You set your minds to something and play like family.
Tight-knit family, great leaders at the top, a great tribute to your Crusader brothers you had lost. You get your first taste of the NCAA tournament after all this emotion in 2004, and you get top seeded North Dakota. What were the best lessons that you took away as a team from that trip to Colorado Springs for the first time in the big dance?
We'd all played against great teams before, right? Like that year we'd played against some solid Hockey East teams and seen good competition. Um, that North Dakota team had some absolute studs on it, right? Like Zach Parise was on that team. Bochenski was on that team. Had scored like 40 goals in the regular season. And watching those guys fly around just shows you the extra gear of what's capable in the college game. So while we were having good success in Atlantic hockey, we knew there was something more. And while, it might have taken all of us another 15 years to be able to keep up with a guy like Zach Parise speed wise, it made us realize that, hey, if we're going to consistently make noise at a conference and win those tough at a conference games, there's something else that we need to be able to do as a team. Right. And if that's work harder in the gym or play certain types of systems, I think it was eye opening for everybody in the program. And then to some aspect, I don't think we had too much of the bright lights, but we were playing at World Arena against an unbelievable North Dakota team. You're in the tournament, and you're getting some press and some media and stuff like that. So you take it. It's not a normal game day, right? When you're there, you like to think it is, but it isn't. So the opportunity to go through that, and we hung with them, right? It was 3-0. It's not like we got ran out of the rink, but they were good, and you could tell there was a step there. But 2 years later, you fast forward to where we ended up, there was a comfort, and I think that permeated down from our classes, seniors, all the way down to the freshmen of, all right, guys, we've put the work in. Let's see what we can do.
And you got that chance, March 24th, 2006. You're Atlantic Hockey champs again. You're now a senior. You're a captain. You're a leader, a top player. And now you're facing Minnesota. Similar story, loaded with NHL draft picks, a future Bruin in Phil Kessel. This game is essentially played in their backyard, Grand Forks, North Dakota. What was the intensity like in that?
It's a backyard of a neighbor who doesn't like them very much. Right?
Right.
Pretend you hate your neighbor. That's essentially what the backyard was for Minnesota.
So did you feel the building and the energy around the underdog like they talk about in the NCAA tournament for basketball? Really, everyone becomes a Holy Cross fan in that arena?
Oh, 100%. Yeah, that stadium was 100% a Holy Cross for that first game of the regional. They were going, it was the loudest I've ever heard a rink. And I don't think that's just because I was standing on the ice. We all had family up in the stands. And once that place filled out, kind of halfway through the first, it was amazingly Holy Cross biased. And when you get that, you get the environment, right? The Ralph is just a beautiful arena. And like, how lucky are we to play there?
Yeah.
And then you get that energy and you can't help but feed off of it. And I think the maturity that our team had, we were able to feed off of it positively, right? At no point in that game were we squeezing our sticks too tight, right? We didn't completely forget our systems or just start making it up out there. We were able to take it and really funnel it to a positive place, and play a pretty good hockey game.
So Minnesota's playing close to home. They've got the whole building against them. And the second period is just wild. I mean, I went back and took a look again. You guys are alternating goals back and forth. They get a shorty. You get the go-ahead on a 2-man advantage. You're trading goals throughout the period. What was the action like? And what was the conversation in the room during that second intermission when you realized, hey, we've got a tie hockey game with 20 minutes to go. We're right in this thing.
Yeah, it's like it was like a boxing match, right? Like there was just a ton of counter punches and penalties all over the place, and power plays for both teams. And you got to be smart when you're in a punching match with a team of that caliber, right? Like we'd played games against run and gun type teams before, and we've always trusted our defense, but you can't just go out there and try and skate like a pond hockey game against those players at the time, because they're going to eventually get you. So I think the recognition was, keep our heads, guys, right? We're doing fine here, right? We got one, they got one. So what? Here we are, we're tied, right? The shots weren't like a blowout. It's not like the time of possession was completely lopsided. So let's hang. Let's play our game for 20 minutes or 21 minutes, however long we need to play for, and let's just see what happens. But as long as we trusted the system that we had, we thought we had a chance at a decent outcome.
And you got that decent outcome in overtime. I'm going to ask you to relive a moment you've probably done 1,000 times for friends, family, people who are fans of hockey. About 50 seconds into overtime, you're skating down the left wing wall. How did that puck find the back of the net?
Yeah. The first thing I remember is going out. Pierre, Bubba, and Napo started, right? They started out. I remember sitting on the bench beside Blair and Dale, my line mates, and I was like, we got to end this quick, right? Like, let's just do something to end this quick, right? We don't want to get into a 40-minute game or an extra 40-minute game where we get tired or anything else. let's make the best of our first opportunity here. So I thought it was just kind of a throwaway comment, but ended up kind of being predictive. So I just jumped out there. I remember Matty Burke being down in the corner. I remember him poking it away from, I think it was Ryan Patolny, another like 38 goal scorer that year.
Yeah.
And then he just bumped it to me up the boards. It wasn't like a fancy breakout pass or anything. I don't know if they were on a line change or what, but I just put my head down for like 5 hard strides, got into the neutral zone, and then I saw Blair fly into the net on the far side. And I didn't have a great shooting angle at first when I came into the blue line. So I was like, all right, let's throw it to the net, right? You can never do anything bad if you throw it to the net. I just careened off their defenseman inside foot, goalie, their D-man, everybody was leaning the other way, and I just saw a net. Fired it, went right in, and then you black out, right? Like the place goes bananas. And then I think I legit blacked out from excitement for about 8 to 10 seconds. Wake up at the bottom of the pile with the whole team in there, just legs and bodies everywhere. Pierre and I are like face to face with our cages. He's just screaming, I'm screaming, everybody's screaming. It's something that you play for your whole life, right? And for us, everyone dreams about going to the NHL and stuff like that when you're kids, but when you're going to D1 and you're like, all right, like we said, yeah, we had 7 pre-med guys, right? We're probably doing that next year instead of playing hockey. So for us, the opportunity to do something like that was, I think, just the coolest thing that we could have ever imagined at the time. And you go off the ice, the whole place is buzzing, you're hugging your family, and then you go home back to the hotel and you realize you got to play North Dakota in their barn the next day. So sobering moment there, but it was as much pure joy as you could possibly have in sports.
You've had a wonderful life, husband, father, surgeon. You've accomplished so much, but can anything else possibly compare to that feeling with those guys in the room on that day?
It's a completely different thing, right? Like you don't want to put that up with the birth of your kids or your wedding, because it's a much more controlled scenario, right? If I had 9 months to prepare for scoring that goal or our team winning that game, it would be just the same all massive well of emotions, but the summation would be a little different, or the crescendo would be a little different. And that's where, the instant of it, right? Where all of a sudden you did it. And that's something where there's very few opportunities outside of sport to ever really experience that in life. Like when I proposed to my wife, I knew for 6 months beforehand I was going to do it.
Right.
When she said yes, it was amazing and everything was great. And same with the birth of our kids. There are other things you'll never forget, and they're core memories. But in the sporting world, I don't think not much that I could do anymore would ever top that. The only equivalent would be if my kids were able to do something or succeed to a level at that level, and I would have the amazing opportunity to live it through them.
And hopefully that day will come, because it sounds like they're already skating around at Notre Dame preparing for their future. Let me ask you one more question about this miracle win over Minnesota. Has it come up in a surprising place or conversation where somebody realizes or connects the dots, or you kind of catch a glance of a highlight maybe on ESPN and it kind of comes rushing back to you in a surprise out of nowhere?
They replayed it a couple times, when they were talking about the NCAA championships and stuff like that, and they played some highlights of the tail end of that game. And of all, like, the WCHA, right, where Minnesota and North Dakota were at the time, they're hockey fans out there, and they're college hockey fans. Like, the regular fan there is a tremendous historian. So the most random time, I went to med school in a very small town in Missouri, and a friend of mine had a friend of theirs visiting from Wisconsin, and he was wearing a Wisconsin Badgers hockey jersey. And my friend introduced me and said like, "Oh, you're a hockey fan. You're a hockey fan. You used to play hockey." And as soon as I said like, "Oh yeah, I went to Holy Cross," he was like, "What? No way." He's like, "You guys beat Minnesota? That was amazing." And then he recognized all the guys in my class, right? He
Wow.
recognized Casada, Pierre Blair, all of the
Mhm.
seniors from that team, just as being a fan and, doing some research of the team who beat Minnesota. Because I think out west, you either love Minnesota or very much dislike them.
That's right.
So we made some happy memories for other people, not just Holy Cross fans that day.
The magic of '06 lives on, even in the Midwest. Let's take one last break. When we return, we'll look ahead to the induction ceremony and the speech for the jersey retirement right here on Sader Stories.
Football is back here at City Field in Worcester.
Fuller, touchdown! Still on his feet, touchdown!
Many financial advisors are commission-based advisors that work for a bank. At Car Financial, we work for you. Our primary focus is helping our clients achieve their goals. You worked hard in your career. You've earned your retirement. Now let us show you how to make the most out of what you have. We're here to answer your investment, retirement, income tax, and estate planning questions. Through every stage of life, we're here for you. Call us at Car Financial Group today.
Back-to-back trips and Patriot League tournament titles for the College of the Holy Cross.
I'm Kevin Gale, voice of the Crusaders, and this is Sader Stories, presented by UMass Memorial Health. We're joined by Crusader hockey legend Tyler McGregor. Okay, Tyler, you took your studies seriously at Holy Cross. As a pre-med student, you had to balance a lot academically with hockey. How do you feel that Holy Cross best sets you up to succeed in medicine today?
The hours of the pre-med balancing a D1 sport, it helped. In high school, I don't know if anybody's really that good at, you think you're busy, and some of these kids are, but as you go through life, you realize how much busier you can be. And the Holy Cross was a very important step for me in there. Balancing junior hockey and high school academics is a lot different than balancing varsity hockey at the D1 level and a place with high academic standards, right? That's why I wanted to go there. I knew I needed to be molded into somebody who could be better at time management and all those sorts of things. And we had mentors at Holy Cross that were helpful all along the way to make sure that you succeeded while still knowing that you had to put the work in order to get there.
And it allowed you to live two dreams. After graduating in 2006, you played pro hockey with the Cleveland Barons in the AHL. How valuable was that experience in turning the page from hockey to medicine shortly after?
I think that's exactly what it was for me. I never had any grand plans. Obviously our senior year was going pretty well. And, some later in the year, it was never a distraction, but later in the year, the idea that the opportunity might come up became about. My medical school was actually unbelievably understanding of that. They let me defer my acceptance into med school so I could play hockey for a year. As long as my entrance scores were good, they said I was good. So that was incredibly kind of them. And that experience in Cleveland, watching some and playing with some pretty good hockey players up there. And then, playing lower level minor pro that next year, riding the bus, right? Getting a feeling of what that's like. It was very helpful in terms of turning the page. Retiring at the end of your college career, no matter what your 4 years look like, is a big transition for a lot of people. And it was no doubt for me as well. But having that year, most people before they go to med school, they do a gap year of research or they scribe in a medical office or something like that. So mine was obviously much less medically based, other than watching my teammates break their nose. But it really helped in terms of knowing, deep within my heart that it's like, you know what? My time at Holy Cross can never be topped by anything that's going to happen in my pro career, right? Like, sure, if I went on to win the Stanley Cup and that was in the plans for me, okay, sure, I might go on to other things. But for what I knew I wanted out of life, it was a great time for me to put a bow on it and say, you know what, for me, my senior year went out as good as I could ever have possibly imagined it, with guys who I would not trade for anyone on the planet as teammates.
That's
And
incredible.
and knowing that, it's like, all right, cool, I'm ready, right? So that's what allowed me to turn the page. Still miss it, of course. When I was in Missouri, there wasn't a lot of places to go watch a game while I was in med school, but it very much made it easier to transition, getting it out of my system and knowing for sure that it was the right thing in the right time.
And that was wonderful flexibility from your med school, A.T. Still University in Missouri. You focused on sports medicine. Today, you're an orthopedic surgeon with South Bend Orthopedics right in Notre Dame's backyard. How does your hockey career stay most relevant in the work you're doing treating athletes today? You can probably see eye to eye with them in a lot of ways.
Yeah, it is helpful, right? So obviously Notre Dame has one of the biggest athletic departments in the country. And we do have a lot of guys, our sports medicine orthopedic surgeons who have played at a pretty high level. Being able to talk the talk and understanding what these athletes go through is super helpful. And the collegiate game has changed an insane amount, even as you so kindly reminded me, since 18 years since I graduated. But the things that these athletes at all schools, Notre Dame's just like the biggest example of all of it, with nutritionists and sports psychologists and performance coaches and all these other sorts of things. You need to know the stressors that these people are going through on a day-to-day basis, because they're, to some degree, they're just kids. Right, like they're 18 years old. They just left home just like I did, leaving Toronto and coming to Massachusetts. And they're dealing with all that stuff too. So having gone through it, having played, it's nice to be able to use the lingo and the jargon, but I don't cover hockey exclusively, right? We cover all the other Olympic sports, and I see fencers in the office just as frequently as I see any other sport. So it is nice to know, even if you don't know the nuance. I couldn't fence anybody. I don't know how to do that, but you need to know the stressors they're going through and how you can put their mind at ease when something's not going right with their body, right? That's why they come see me.
A great marriage of all your skill sets. And finally, looking ahead to your jersey retirement ceremony, I know you're going to be making the trip to the Hart Center. Who will be joining you? What are you planning to share in terms of your acceptance speech? And what do you hope that your family takes away from seeing, especially your kids, from seeing what you meant to Holy Cross and what Holy Cross meant to you?
The part that I probably will get emotional about, well, it'll be a few. I'm a little more emotional as I've gotten older, I think. But I mean, my wife's a grad, so she obviously knows how much that place means to us as a couple. It's where we met. It meant a lot to her family. Her great uncle went there, and he was a football player there for a lot of years. And then I hope my kids are old enough to watch how, when you walk into a room of Holy Cross hockey players, how it's like you never left. And it's like you're among best friends. And I'm starting to see that now with my own kids and their teammates, which is really cool as their coach. I think that's something that might be lost on them because they're still a little bit young, but I think they'll remember it and maybe be able to put two and two together in time. in terms of just being there and the speech and all that, it's just going to be about how grateful I am for those guys, right? Like we all got together and went through some unbelievable highs and some really lows during those most formative years as a person, right? When you're figuring out who you are and gaining your independence and learning what you can bring to the table in any given situation. And I look back at where a lot of my classmates are now and teammates now. It turned out to be some pretty good guys, right? We're really stand-up community guys. There's a ton of parents that are coaching their kids hockey and other sports. A lot of Holy Cross marriages that are still hanging on pretty strong. So all of that, it's just such a healthy place. And if my kids end up, whether there's sport involved or not, if they end up at a place like Holy Cross, I know they'll be ready to make that next jump into whatever it is they do after high school.
Tyler McGregor, thank you so much for sharing all these memories from an incredible time in Holy Cross hockey history. I can tell it meant a lot to you, but it meant so much to so many people inside and outside the program. Congratulations. We can't wait to see your number 20 jersey hanging in the Hart Center. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It'll be an emotional week and weekend for sure, but incredibly lucky.
And we can't wait to see you. And my thanks to everyone for tuning in. We'll be back soon with another episode of Sader Stories. Until then, tell your fellow Crusaders about our show. It's available anytime on SoundCloud, Apple Podcasts, and Spotify. And if you love hearing these stories from Crusaders, please leave us a 5-star rating and review. Thanks again for tuning in. I'm Kevin Gale. Go Cross Go.